Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's, uh, it's my honor once again to be here this evening with you all, this great tight knit community. Alhamdulillah, it is a Sunday night, and it's still great to see the masjid at this capacity. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you and allow you to leave with goodness and betterment in your lives. Alhamdulillah, this evening I have the fortunate privilege as well as responsibility of reminding myself and reminding you all of a very important topic. This is a topic that concerns every single one of us. Islam is a comprehensive religion. And part of the beauty of Islam is that it teaches us how to be the best version of ourselves. And it allows us and it encourages us to make sure that we're upholding the responsibilities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed upon us. When it comes to Al-Islam, there are three main responsibilities that we must uphold. Our responsibility towards Allah Azza wa Jal, our responsibility towards ourselves, as well as our responsibility towards others. Part of being a Muslim is being a comprehensive Muslim. What good is it that you come to the masjid and you see the brothers and you pray and you read the Quran? MashaAllah, you are Abu Bakr radiallahu anh in the masjid, but when you leave, your actions are like Abu Jahl. This is certainly not the way of a Muslim. But a Muslim is God conscious in all states, in all places, and all situations. Part of your deen is not only how you interact with Allah, not only how you view yourself, but how you deal with others. And from the most important relationships that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has emphasized within our Islamic tradition is the relationship between parents and their children. And as I said, we are all children, and many of us are parents, and many of you will soon be parents, inshallah ta'ala. This is something that concerns us. And one of the greatest ways to draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually to draw closer to our parents. And Allah Azza wa Jal, He gives us guidance throughout the Quran in exactly how to do this. In tonight's lecture, I would like to take this short time to focus on two beautiful verses found in the Quran, more specifically in Surah Al-Isra, verses 23 and 24. And it is in these verses that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will highlight our responsibility as sons and daughters towards our parents. And in doing so, this relationship on the Day of Judgment becomes an evidence for us rather than an evidence against us. Allah Azza wa Jal, He teaches us and He reminds us in Surah Al-Isra, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا إما يبلغن عندك الكبر أحدهما أو كلاهما فلا تقل لهما أف ولا تنهرهما وقل لهما قولا كريما واخفض لهما جناح الذل من الرحمة وقل رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. What beautiful guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Such insight on how we interact and how we deal with our parents. To those who have their parents with them today here sitting beside them, I advise you to listen, take heed, and reflect on the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for those whose parents may not be here or have moved on, guidance is still found in these verses on how we can honor our relationship with them. Allah Azza wa Jal, He begins with a statement, command, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ. Allah Azza wa Jal is telling us that there's a ruling associated with what is coming after this. That everything that Allah is telling us right now in His sight is obligatory. It is mandatory. This is not an issue of should I not. This is an issue of I must. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ. Allah Azza wa Jalla is telling us the first thing. The first thing I want you to know and recognize is your responsibility towards the Creator. We have a responsibility towards Allah. And the greatest responsibility is that we worship Him. For indeed, it is the purpose and it is the objective of we are here in the first place. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Allah Azza wa Jal, He did not create you and He did not create me except that we should first and foremost recognize Him and submit to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And now He's telling us this responsibility. And that responsibility is the greatest responsibility that we have towards the creation. And it starts with our parents. Allah Azza wa Jal, He's telling us something here. And this is something we often find throughout Revelation, whether it's the Quran or the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, that the worship of Allah and being dutiful to the parents, they go hand in hand. The worship of Allah, meaning fulfilling the rights of Allah, and being dutiful and being righteous towards our parents, they go hand in hand. Why? Because these are the two most beloved actions to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you were in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ, I'm sure you would think about many of the questions you would ask him. And I'm sure that from those questions, as a young man or as a young woman, would be, Ya Rasulullah, what are the most beloved acts to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Meaning, Ya Rasulullah, what is most pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And this is the exact question that Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu reports. An individual approaching the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and asking him this very question. Ya Rasulullah, ayyul amal ahabbu ila Allah? What deed is most beloved to Allah? And he goes on to say, as-salatu fi waqtiha. That the first most beloved act that a man, that a woman can put forth in the sight of Allah is to pray and establish their salah when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has invited them. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَوْقُوتًا. That verily Allah has established the salah upon the believers at fixed times. And the most beloved thing is that when the individual hears the adhan, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, he recognizes that Allah is greater than anything or anyone that I'm doing, that I'm interacting with at this moment. And they leave that and they turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they submit themselves. First thing you will be asked about on the day of judgment, أول ما يحاسب به العبد يوم القيامة من عمله صلاته. It's because it's near and dear to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Ma'un, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. Many of our teachers used to say, I remember when I was reading unto my teacher, he stopped me because I was reading and I was doing my muraja and I was reading to him and I said to him and I recited to him, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. And I stopped. And then I remember he hit me. He says, continue. Don't stop there. Somebody might hear that and they're in the salah and the imam is reading, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. I hear that and say, I'm going to walk out of salah. I don't need that. الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ. These are the ones who play around with their what? With their salah. Mom says, Yalla yibni ruh salli. Get up and pray. And you say, no, not yet. Not now. What's happening here? What's happening here is that you're not only disobeying your mom, but you're depriving yourself of what is most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he goes on, Azza wa Jal, or so he goes on to ask, ثُمَّ أَيُّ. Like then what is the most greatest? He says, بِرُّ الْوَالِدَيْنِ. And after your salah, and after you establish your salah for Allah, the greatest thing that you as a young man, as a young woman can do is be dutiful and righteous towards your parents. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, or He refers to Himself here as the Rabb. He's establishing His rububiyyah. And there's a reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala establishes His rububiyyah in this verse. Because our belief in the rububiyyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to understand a few things. Number one is to understand that Allah Azza wa Jal, He created us. Number two, it's to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after He has created us, He promises to maintain and sustain and protect us. These are attributes of the rububiyyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But my question to you is, how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fulfill His rububiyyah unto us? How? He uses our mother and our father. It is your mother who gave birth to you. It is your mother who carried you for 9 months. And after giving birth to you, it was your mother who suckled you for up to 2 years. And it was your father who went out every single day, most likely working 2 jobs, sometimes even 3, to make sure that he can make enough money so that you can wear the nicest clothes and so that you can have the nicest shoes and that you can go to the best of the masajid and to the best of the schools. To make sure that you're eating food every single day, that when you open the fridge, there's something there for you to eat and there's something there for you to drink, but you just thought it's there. You took it for granted. But you don't know that it was Allah, your Rabb, that was using your mother and your father to sustain and maintain and protect you. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. الوالدين. This is a very important point. When Allah uses His words, He uses them with wisdom. He says, وَالْوَالِدَيْنِ. He doesn't say, وَالْأَبَوَيْنِ. He doesn't say, al-um wal-ab. You know, al-um wal-ab, these are very endearing terms that you would use. Someone who raised you, someone who loved you, someone who provided for you. Ya abati. This is an endearing statement. But Allah Azza wa Jal, He's not using this term. He's saying, بِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Meaning that Allah is telling us that whether or not your parents were there for you, supported you, provided for you, loved you, nurtured you, Whether they did this or they did not, it is your duty to honor them. Just because they are your biological parents. My dad didn't love me. Why should I show him respect? My mom never nurtured me. Why should I be righteous towards her? My parents never showed me love or affection. They never gave me what I wanted. Why should I, as a young man or as a young woman, be better to them? Because they brought you into this world. And that's enough. My mom and my dad are not Muslims. Why should I respect them? They brought you into this world. So we understand something here, that our respect, our honor, and our servitude to our parents is unconditional. It is not on the condition that they serve me, so I serve them. But it is on the condition of the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. So Allah is telling us exactly how we need to interact with them. And this is a common theme throughout the Quran. وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ حُسْنًا وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ إِحْسَانًا وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. It's repeated. It's repetitive. And why is Allah using this term ihsan? And why is it constantly reiterated and repeated throughout these verses? It's because ihsan is a beautiful attribute. So we cannot fulfill this attribute until we understand it. And we are able to only understand it if we study its definition by the Prophet ﷺ. Is there anywhere in the Quran, or let's make it even easier, is there anywhere in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that tells us exactly what ihsan is? It's a question. Is where? Go ahead, young man. MashaAllah. Which hadith is this from? This infamous hadith. Ahsan. This young guy, mashallah. Hadith Jibreel. The question is actually asked, Mal ihsan? What is ihsan? Hadith Jibreel asking the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Al-Islam, al-Iman, al-Ihsan, what is it? As the young man said, أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه. فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك. So how do we reconcile? How do we bring this together? How does it make sense? You know, I have two young girls. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them and preserve them. Sometimes when I'm out in public, they're very what? Obedient and respectful. If I go over to somebody's house, they just hover around me and they're shy. And I say, can you go pick that? Yes, Baba, I'll pick it up. And they're very kind and respectful. I say, I love these kids. And then I go home and we enter the door. Go upstairs. You're running there. Oh, what happened? Shaykh, what changed? Oh, it's because people were watching you. Huh? So you changed the way you were acting around me because the people were watching you. You didn't want them to talk bad about you. What is Allah telling us? What is Allah teaching us? That whether or not the people see, it doesn't matter. Because Allah is always watching. Allah is always watching. You know, maybe you're an older man and your parents, they call you and say, Ya ibni, I need to go to the hospital, or I need to go to my my weekly checkup. Can you take me? Yummy, I'm so big for. Okay, I'll come. I'll come. And then you come, you drive, you pull up to the clinic, you open the door for your mom, and you walk. You see someone, you're here, and the person says, "Oh, mashallah, look at this man taking care of his." What's that? Allah was watching the whole time. Allah was watching the whole time, but now because the people are watching you, you want to be that guy? You're more concerned about the opinions of the people towards you than the opinion of Allah and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees you do and how you treat your mother, your father. Continues. إما يبلغن عندك الكبر أحدهما أو كلاهما. Allah Azza wa Jal, He's teaching us something here, brothers, sisters, that there's a circle of life. When you were born, were you strong? When you were born, were you strong? You were weak to the point where you can't even keep your head up. You can't even keep your head up. So your mother is carrying you, she's taking care of you, your father is raising you, strengthening you. And then you get older, mashallah. And as you are getting older, what naturally happens to your mother and your father? They become what? Weaker. They become weaker. And once you are at an age of strength, once you are at an age of responsibility, you will slowly see your parents get old. And wallahi, there is nothing that is more heartbreaking than seeing your parents get old. I remember as a young man, when I left out to study initially, I was a young 19, 20-year-old man. And I was gone for just under 10 years. And I had the fortunate opportunity of coming back every now and then and seeing my parents. And every time I would come back, I would see my mom and I would see my dad, and they would greet me at the airport, and I would begin to cry. And I was not crying out of joy because I was able to finally see them, but I was crying because I could see them age. And I knew I missed those days, and I missed those years with them. And there was nothing that hurt me more than understanding that the only thing that I have with my parents is the time. So Allah is saying here, if your parents become old, this should not be a hassle, but it should be a means towards Jannah. The Prophet ﷺ, you have a beautiful mimbar here. The Prophet ﷺ's mimbar consisted of 3 steps. And one day the Prophet ﷺ, he ascended the mimbar and he made the statement, Ameen, Ameen, Ameen. And the companions, they were very observant of the Prophet ﷺ. If he did anything out of the norm, they would go and address the Prophet ﷺ. So this is exactly what they did. After the Prophet ﷺ gave his speech, they approached him والسلام, and they inquired. And they said, Ya Rasulullah, we saw you that when you were ascending the mimbar, you did something different. And you made the statement, Ameen, Ameen, Ameen. Why? Prophet ﷺ, he explained, as I was ascending the mimbar, Jibreel alayhi salam, he came to me and he made 3 dua. And I asked Allah to accept every single one of those dua. And from the dua that Jibreel made while the Prophet ﷺ was ascending the mimbar was Raghima Anfu. May his nose be covered in dirt. Meaning, what is he saying? He's saying, may he be humiliated. This is a serious dua. And it's coming from Jibreel. May he be humiliated. And this humiliation is not only a humiliation in the dunya, but it's a humiliation that is also present in the akhirah. May he be humiliated. Who? The one who reaches the age of what? Strength and power, while his mother and his father have reached the age of weakness and does not attain Jannah through their service. This is something important, my dear brothers and sisters. Understand this. This is Jibreel making the dua and khayru khalqillah asking Allah to accept that dua. What do you think the chances of this dua being accepted? Mustajab. And he could have made any dua. He could have made any dua. But this is the dua he made. So we take heed. فلا تقل لهما أف ولا تنهرهما وقل لهما قولا كريما. فلا تقل لهما أف. Sometimes you have that really smart kid who's talking back to their parents. Don't talk back to your parents. Allah doesn't like it. I didn't say oof. That's not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying here. Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying any expression of disrespect, of frustration, of irritation must be avoided. And this is not only a restriction in word, but it is a restriction in action. Go clean your room. I'll take out the garbage. Roll your eyes. On your phone. Go do this. Yeah, I'll be right there. That is off. That is off. فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا. Do not scold them. Do not disrespect them. Do not undermine them. Did they do that when you were in your crib as a child, waking up in the middle of the night, needing food, needing drink? Did your mother just stop when she was in the middle of her contractions and say, no, this is too much for me? What about when your mother couldn't sleep at night? Rolling from one side to the other. For not 1 month, not 2 months, not 3 months, for up to 9 months. What about your father? When the invoice comes in from the private school, did he put you in because he wants you to have a good education? Did he say it and say, oh, let me just send him to public school? What about when you're getting your back to school clothes and you go to Foot Locker, you go to Champs, and you see those new Jordans, and you're like, Mom, I really want them. Does she say, oh, do you? Does she turn around? Does she scold you? One thing that we really need to remember, my dear brothers and sisters, الجزاء من جنس العمل. الجزاء من جنس العمل. What goes around comes around. The way you treat your mother, the way you treat your father, is going to be the exact same way that Allah facilitates your child to treat you. If you treat them disrespectfully, you treat them with an ego, you undermine them, Allah, you have something coming your way. Just as al-jaza'u min jins al-a'mal, Allah also, He says to us, al-jaza'u al-ihsan illa al-ihsan. You treat your mother respectfully, your father respectfully, with righteousness and kindness and mercy. That is exactly what is coming your way. I will have grown men come into my office and cry about the state that their son is in. And he says, Wallahi, it's my fault. He disrespects me. He doesn't listen to me. He says, it's my fault. I say, Hammi, why is it your fault? He says, because this is exactly how I treated my own father. This is a grown man crying. When Allah is advising us to treat other people with respect, it's not only for the betterment of that person, but it's for yourself and your future. وقل لهما قولا كريما. Be generous to them with your statements and your actions. When was the last time? When was the last time? I want you to be honest, young men, young women. When was the last time you went straight to your mother, your father, and you grabbed their hand and you said, Provide mercy towards you. I know what it is to be merciful with my parents now. When my mother cannot even get out of the vehicle and I need to lift her, just as she used to place me in the vehicle and lift me out of my baby seat, I am doing that now for my أنا ربياني صغيرة, as she did for me when I was young. My mother, I have to now be considerate of, did she eat today? Did she eat today? Mom, are you okay? Is everything all right? Can I bring you something? Just as she did for me. Subhanallah, I finally know what it is when my mom used to give me her food and say, eat. But I say, Mom, there's nothing on your plate. She says, I get full watching you eat. Wallahi, it is the same way now. That if I'm at my home and I bring food for my mother and she's sitting there and she's eating and I'm hungry, I am full as she eats. It's full circle. وَقُلْ رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. And Allah, have mercy upon them as they did upon me when I was just a young man. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma was making tawaf around the Kaaba, and he saw a Yamani man, and he was carrying his mother on his back, and he's yelling at the top of his lungs, I am her humble camel. I am her humble camel. I carried her more than she carried me. He's proud, right? And he's doing a good thing. And he's trying to pay her back. So he approaches Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu, and he asks him, have I paid her back? Have I finally paid the debt back? And Abdullah radiallahu anhu, he says to him, no, not even a single contraction. You know, I never truly understood. And you know, I'm talking a lot about the mothers here, but this just follows the guidance of the Prophet ﷺ. I'm not taking anything away from the fathers. I'm a father as well. The Prophet ﷺ said that when he was asked, who is more deserving of my companionship, he said, your mother, your mother, your mother, and then your father. But I truly never understood the struggle, the sacrifice that my mother endured for me until I. How difficult it was for my parents to provide me everything that I ever want. I don't remember these things, but as a man, as a father, watching my wife give birth to my children, watching the sacrifice she made, every time my wife looks in the mirror, She remembers our children before she thinks of herself. She sees the athar of her children on her before she sees herself, because she sacrificed her body for our children. She sacrificed her sleep for our children. She even sacrificed her career for my children. But they don't recognize that today. They don't recognize that today. But they will themselves when they get older. So how can I pay my mother and my father back? There are a few things that I want to leave you with this evening. Practical ways that you and I can pay our parents back to the best of our ability. It won't be paid in full, but at least we have done our best. Number one, it's to follow the guidance found in these verses. Ihsan, mercy, giving them our undivided attention, empathy, humility towards them. Number two is to make dua for them constantly. إذا مات الإنسان إذا مات الإنسان انقطع عنه عمله إلا من ثلاث، إلا من صدقة جارية أو علم ينتفع به أو ولد صالح يدعو له. Subhanallah, the scholars, they mention something about this narration. And they don't say, why did the Prophet ﷺ attribute righteousness to this child? Why didn't the Prophet ﷺ just say, أَوْ وَلَدٍ يَدْعُو لَهُ? He says, no, أَوْ وَلَدٍ صَالِحٍ يَدْعُو لَهُ. He says that because there is no child that would make dua for their parents after they have passed away, except that from the attributes and characteristics of that child is righteousness. If you are a man or a woman who is making dua for your parents, whether they are living or they have passed away, that is an praise from Allah to you, an honor that you are righteous and that you have given your parents something that they will be proud of. The Prophet ﷺ said that there will be a man that is resurrected on the day of judgment, and in front of him and given to him is a mountain of deeds. And this man will say, Ya Allah, I did not do this. I did not do anything that equates to this much goodness. And then Allah will say to him, this is not from you, but this was the dua and the istighfar that your son or your daughter made for you after you were buried. After everyone forgot you, it was your son and your daughter who came to the masjid in their sujood, who would say, رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. اللهم اغفر لهما وارحمهما. Do you know how proud your father or your mother will be on that day? But they didn't forget me, because we are quickly forgotten after we pass away. Honor your parents while they are living and even after they have passed away. Allow their mercies to be enveloped with their graves to be enveloped with mercy and forgiveness. Your parents will feel the goodness and the righteousness that you perform in their name for them. I tell you something, and I will be honest with you today. I do not give sadaqah in my name. I never give sadaqah in my name. And I will never do it for the rest of my life. Every time I give sadaqah, with the exception of zakat, of course, every time I give sadaqah, I give it in the name of my mother and my father, but they are still here. Because I know if I'm looking for reward, I will be rewarded for being dutiful to my parents. And when Ibn Mas'ud asked, what is most beloved to Allah. He did not mention sadaqah before he mentioned birr al-walidain. And on top of that, if the sadaqah is being donated in my parents' name, I am getting a great reward, and so are they. We have to be smart in how we deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why would I give sadaqah in my name? When I can be rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for birr al-walidain, and my parents can be blessed in this dunya. So make dua for them. Do not forget them. Number 3 is supporting them. And that could be supporting them around the house. It can be supporting them in their daily requirements, whether it be appointments or grocery shopping or whatever it may be. It could even be financially. But just to show you the level of responsibility we have towards our parents, subhanAllah, a question that I'm sure the Imam is often asked during Ramadan. Yeah, Imam, am I allowed to give my zakat to my mom and my dad? Give zakat to your mom and dad as if they are masakin. You're responsible for your mother and your father. They are not from amongst those who qualified for financial assistance or donation or zakat or almsgiving. It's your responsibility. This man, young man, this young guy, he comes to the Prophet ﷺ. He says, Ya Rasulullah, my dad is taking my money from me. Anytime I, make money, I got a part-time job, I'm making money. My dad's saying, Yalla, give it to me. He's complaining to the Prophet ﷺ about his dad taking his money. He thought the Prophet ﷺ was like, yeah, let's be your dad. Let's get it straight. Let him understand that what's yours is yours and what's his is his. You know what he does? He looks at the boy and he says, Anta wa maluka li abik. You and your money belong to your father. Don't get it twisted, young man. Now, fathers don't go home and, crack the piggy bank and start, taking that from your kid. That's not what the Prophet ﷺ is saying. What he's saying is that you have a financial responsibility towards your parents. Be that responsible individual. Because when you give to your parents, remember, هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان. What goes around comes around. The last piece of advice that I do want to give is to give precedence to mom and dad over your nawafil. We're having this conversation. Sometimes when somebody starts becoming religious, they become very involved in their deen. And they become a ghost in the home. Either he isolates himself in the room and he starts, reading the Quran, memorizing the Quran, praying their nawafil. And if they're not at home, they're in the masjid. They're never at home. Parents don't see them anymore. You know what our faith teaches us? That if I'm at home, and I want the youth to really understand this, if I'm at home and I just finished my fard salah, and I want to stand up and pray a sunnah, and I'm up and I make takbir al-ihram and I start reciting Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and then I say, man! You know what your deen tells you to do? Drop your salah. Drop your salah. Because that call, Ahmad, is wajib. That call is wajib. And what you are doing is what? It's a sunnah. تستبدلون الذي هو أدنى بالذي هو خير. So I need to get my ajr. Your ajr is with Ahmad. That's your ajr. Because there's going to come a day, guess what? You're not going to hear that voice. Ahmed! You know what? I know brothers, they record their mother and father's voices. They're sitting with their mom and their dad, and they do record. And they just have a conversation, everything's good. 30-minute recording. And he says, I recorded it. Why did you record that? He says, there's going to come a day I'll never hear my parents' voice again. I'll never hear that voice again. Your mom calls you, you're out with your boys, and it says mom, M-O-M, dad, D-A-D. Wallahi, there will come a day where that call will never come in again. I want to call mom and dad. Oh my God, something's happening. There will come a day where nobody picks up on the other side. I need to message them. There will only be one check mark. There won't be two. And until we can understand this, for me, personally, sorry guys, I went way off, but whatever. For me, personally, I am never fully content when I'm sitting with my mother and father. I'm never ecstatic. You know why? Because as I'm sitting with them and I'm so happy that I'm in their presence, deep down in my heart, I know that there will come a day I walk into their home and they are not there. And it hurts. And it hurts. My dear brothers and sisters, I advise you as I advise myself. Your parents are your doors to Jannah. Your parents are one of the most blessed ways for you to earn the pleasure of Allah. For the pleasure of Allah is in the pleasure of your parents, and the anger of Allah is in the anger of your parents. I advise you that when you go home today and you enter upon your mother and your father, that you grab their hand, you kiss them and you hug them and you say thank you and you ask them to forgive you. And if you go home and your parents are no longer here, I ask that you make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I ask that you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive them and have mercy upon them. And to place that mercy upon them just as they placed that mercy upon you when you were young. Do not let this be something you regret. Do not be someone when you're burying or you're praying janazah on your mother or your father, you look back and you say, I shoulda, coulda, woulda, because these are the people on the day of judgment. They will say, Ya laytani qaddamtu li hayati. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be amongst those who are sincere in our statements, in our actions. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be amongst those who treat our parents the way they deserve to be treated. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shower His forgiveness and His mercy upon our parents. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be amongst those who listen to this speech and follow the best of it. It is my absolute pleasure to have been with you all this past weekend. I truly mean it. You have an amazing community. I don't say this, just to say it. I truly believe you have a strong community led by strong individuals. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings goodness to this community, to this masjid. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows this masjid to be a means of drawing people closer to Allah in a way that He deserves to be worshipped. Again, جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Um, is your hand up because you have a question, young man? There are some questions online. How much time do we have, Brother Umar? Okay. Then by all means, we will cater to your questions, inshallah. Please go ahead.
So there are two from yesterday.
Okay.
So someone asked, what can I do if my father does not want to take me to the masjid?
What can I do if my father does not want to take me to the masjid? Well, the first thing you need to do is understand why your father does not want to take you to the masjid, right? So there may be a reason. It's always important that we give our fathers the benefit of the doubt. Maybe your father says, I cannot take you to the masjid because there's something that he needs to attend to. So the first thing that you should do is figure out what is the reason, Father, that you cannot take me to the masjid. Now, if it is a reason that he cannot facilitate the ride to take you there and to take you back, then you should do your best to ask him for permission to find someone to help facilitate that, right? Secondly, you have a mother, don't you? And you can possibly ask your mother, or possibly ask other people within the community to help you get to the masjid, inshallah. So I think the first thing you need to do is, inshallah, ask your father, what is the reason? And if it's a valid reason, then see if you can find someone, inshallah, to facilitate that. Inshallah.
Another question from yesterday was, from what you said today, what opinion were yours alone, and what have you taken from the ulama before? That's from yesterday.
What did I speak about yesterday?
Um, sowing the seeds of change.
So sowing the seeds of change. So what we did is we gave 6 E's. Isn't that right? Who here can give me the 6 E's? Now I'll know if there was any khair that came from me yesterday. If you can give me the 6 E's, yo Allah, I'm gonna be proud. You give me the 6 E's. Inshallah. Okay, you wanna give it to me? Yeah, go ahead. Education example.
Education, example, entourage,
Entourage. Huh?
empathy,
Empathy.
environment,
Environment. One more. I think it was the first one, right? Edu?
I said it,
Okay, you said it. Engagement. Ahsan.
engagement,
So every single one of those E's was provided with evidence either from the Quran or the Sunnah. So every one of those E's, whether it be education, we spoke about that in depth, right? مَن يُرِيدِ اللَّهُ بِهِ خَيْرًا يُفَقِّهُ فِي الدِّينِ. We spoke about engagement, how the Prophet ﷺ would engage the youth, whether it be individuals like Zayd ibn Thabit, when it comes to the collection of the Quran and the documentation of the Quran, or Osama bin Zayd when it comes to leading the armies. We spoke about empathy, how the Prophet ﷺ dealt with the young man who asked about the zina. We spoke about what else? Environment, how the Prophet ﷺ created a healthy environment. And the first thing he did when he entered into Medina was to establish a masjid in order to maintain a healthy environment for that community. What else? The people we surround yourself with, the statement of blacksmith, right? The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ with the blacksmith and the one who gives misk. So everything was supported with the Quran and the Sunnah. And if anything was from other than the Quran and Sunnah, then that is from my own deficiency and the influence of the shaitan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us for our shortcomings. Next question. Yes, please go ahead. You have a belt?
Don't want to do that. That's easy. We don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I repeat my question so
Yeah.
others can hear. How would you discipline a kid who refuses to take feedback or listen?
How would you discipline a kid if?
Refuse to seek feedback or listen to instructions.
Okay, I think we answered that question yesterday. I would say number one, patience is a virtue. You need to be patient with your child. You as a young man, I'm sure were the same way with your parents as well. But we'll go back to the Athar of Ali radiallahu anh, 7, 7, and 7. The first 7, you need to make sure you got 2 young boys there, right? Those are your sons. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect them. Sorry? I'm like, yo, like, I'm like, don't do that. I'm like, no, like, we're giving you all the time. You got older ones, eh? Yeah. So, first 7 with these, you want to play with because you want to build that rapport. You want them to know that that you love them and you have their best interest in mind. And then once they turn 8, and from 8 to 14, you want to make sure that you're teaching them and that you're guiding them and that you're influencing them. And part of teaching is by leading by example, that you're giving them that example. It's something we did speak about yesterday. And then once they reach the age, how old is the one that you're concerned about? 10? Still, just advice. They're still young. He is not even at the age of, no, still not even an adolescent. This is where we as parents need to be patient because sometimes we'll see that when a parent enforces, especially matters of the religion upon young people, what happens is the actual opposite. Instead of drawing nearer to the deen and becoming more obedient to Allah and their parents, they actually go the other way, right? And then once they reach the age of 15 all the way to 21, then you want to just advise. You want to advise them. But I think that as a man dealing with a 10-year-old, it's going to come with its conflict. It's going to come with its difficulties. The kid is probably in grade 5. I teach in elementary school, and I will tell you, the hardest grade that I teach is grade 5 and 6. So, inshallah ta'ala, it's our duty to be patient with them, to lead by example, and make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asking Him to allow them to be amongst those who are more obedient to Him and to those who deserve to be obeyed, inshallah. Well, yeah. Any other questions? Again, thank you so much. Jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless and reward you all. And I look forward to seeing you بإذن ta'ala in the near future. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Again, السلام عليكم.
And he asked me to express thanks on behalf of the BCMA and the BCMA Richmond branch for both of our shayukh, Sheikh Ali Nasser and Sheikh Yusuf Susi, who came to spend their weekend with us, inshallah, this weekend for the conference. And they've had very busy schedules. They haven't had much sleep. We picked them up in the morning and they were falling asleep. So, Jazakumullah khairan, barakallah fikum. And we hope, inshallah, to see you back in Vancouver soon. And I hope the brothers here have enjoyed their talks. And we do have their contacts. If any other questions come up, feel free to come see us and we'll pass it on to them for answers. And just a reminder, our conference continues every day now for the rest of the week. We have speakers up every night pretty well and activities. We have another guest speaker coming in for next weekend. So please come to the masjid, bring your families. This Christmas Day, Boxing Day weekend, everything will be closed. We do have a program here. We'll provide pizza if you guys come in big numbers. So please bring your families, spend the weekend in the masjid, benefit from the ilm that our shuyukh are giving us, and inshallah it'll help build the community as well at the same time. So jazakumullah khairan for attending, and we hope to see you soon, inshallah.